I was raised as a Baptist, and then when I was in high school or so, I started going to a really big non-denominational church.
I was raised a Jehovah's Witness for the first 21 years of my life.
I grew up in a very conservative Christian household.
It was never really pushed on me, but it was definitely a problem if I rebelled against it. You had to acknowledge the idea that he existed and that he was here to help you.
The house I grew up in was a very Catholic family.
Personally, I feel like religion never really quite clicked with me.
Now I consider myself a full-blown atheist, a complete atheist. The biggest change for me coming to SCAD was that I was surrounded by like-minded people who kind of were all in the same not really believing in God thing or Christianity. But what I found really weird were the people who became even more Christian because of it, and the people who kind of transferred their faith from a Christian thing to more of a weird spiritual kind of almost hippie ideology.
I kind of feel like when it comes to having a relationship with God, I don't see it as a person. I would say I more believe in the force than I do in God. At least for me, I think that spiritually speaking, I believe more in positive energy and the whole idea that energy cannot be created or destroyed.
Before, everything was black and white and defined, and this is true and don't question it, and you never questioned it, you know? Whereas now it's I'm totally free to question and pick and choose. I've always had a pretty good relationship with my parents. In some aspects, I think we were fairly normal, but the further I get away from the religion, I guess, the more strange I start to see things. Well, I was disfellowshipped, which essentially means that you are excommunicated from the congregation. I had a boyfriend, a secret boyfriend, that they eventually found out about.
My first quarter at SCAD, I wasn't really planning on going to church. I had a decent relationship with my roommates and my roommates' friends, but it was still really lonely. There was obviously something missing in my life. And was it close Christian friends? Was it a relationship with God? I think it was both of those. I don't try to hide that I'm a Christian. I want people to know it's a really big part of my life, that he's changed me and he's made me a better person.
When I got to SCAD, I just didn't know what everyone else thought about Christianity. And it was hard at first because I only had one Christian friend and no one else seemed to understand why I would kind of stick to a religion.
Honestly, I feel like for the Christians here, it must be kind of difficult because a lot of us are pretty open about our lack of faith. And I feel like that might be kind of odd to the normal Christian, maybe even off-putting.
I've hung out with a few people or 3 or 4 people or something like that, and they're all atheists or something like that. And then I tell them that I believe in God, and they think I'm an idiot.
It would kind of just be sly remarks every once in a while from a crew of mostly atheist or agnostic friends, kind of comparing Christianity or believing in a God or Jesus to Santa Claus or unicorns.
I have no problem with people who are atheists, and I have no problem with people who are agnostics, but I don't appreciate people who are atheists or whatever and think they're so much smarter than any religious person because we have science on our side and we know all of these things, and obviously it's foolish, it's childish, it's a fairy tale.
It's kind of hard to have a really Christian friend in your friend group because you want to make jokes with your not Christian friends, but you also don't want to offend and hurt someone you like. And I think that does happen. And it is a little difficult for Christians, I think.
It was never very intentional, but, it's my heart. You're belittling my character. That sucks.
Don't call me an idiot because of what I believe, because I would never do that to them,
Do I find it easier sometimes, to form an intimate relationship with somebody who's a Christian? Yeah, because we are in the same place in our life. We have the same struggles where we're asking the same questions.
Yeah, it's much easier to have a conversation with atheists about spirituality than non-atheists. I get into a lot of circular arguments, and usually when I have discussions with this, I really try to make a point and try to, change some ideas and maybe plant an idea that they may not have thought of before.
I think sometimes that there's like this fear that like I'm gonna be like a Bible thumping Christian who's gonna try to convict you and change you from your evil ways. But I feel like most people who know me like realize really quickly like that's not what I'm about.
I don't think you're necessarily going to be a certain kind of way because you're a certain religion. I think the way the religion affects you is more personal. And I think that people should really almost shop around to find a belief system that makes them a better person.
I think you get more educated the more you talk to other people about it, I think it's silly for me, it's a big part of my life, so I think it's silly to hide a big part of my life. Why would I do that,
What I find is the people who are the most like spiritual and like the Christians or Catholics that I respect the most are the ones who have found religion by studying. I feel that like on a personal standpoint, I've gone through enough to know that like I personally don't believe in God.
I can't even imagine what my life would be like if I wasn't a Christian, if I didn't, have God to turn around to all the time.
He's kind of like a therapist that'll never charge you for nothing. And he's sure as shit a lot smarter than any fucking shrink, in my opinion.
I think a large amount of the population really clings to the idea of a higher order because it's comforting.
I was walking to work the other day, and I'm stopping at an intersection, just waiting for the crosswalk to change. And this woman comes up to me, and I see her, and she is just like this old black woman, and she just kind of like gives me like the look that like up and down. And then she comes up to me and says, hello, like, have you ever considered being saved?
I don't think it's an issue of salvation. I think it's an issue of showing people Christ and like showing them love. I think God has called us, to love people where they're at.
Well, how do you know that I need to be saved? Like, you haven't met me, you haven't spoken to me, you've just given me a look up and down and assume that I need to find God and be saved.
I think their heart's in the right place, but honestly, it's none of their business. It's not.
God, I wish that people would just like be nice to each other. That's really what I think is Jesus just loved everyone. It didn't matter.
People in the world, that's what we called people outside of the congregation, like, were not capable of love because they did not love Jehovah. I remember like calling one of my few friends out that I had made outside of the congregation kind of like during that time, and he said like, isn't it, interesting like what they say about people outside the world, yet like look who's casting you out, kind of thing.
God, out of all things, in my opinion, is understanding.
I understand what you're asking me, and I'll say it, but I know, like, you have to know that, like, you're asking me to say that, so, like, it makes me look like a really bad person. You want me to say, like, yeah, if you don't believe in Christ, like, you're going to hell.
Like, atheist people and agnostic people, like, they're not going to hell. If they're good people, they're not going to hell. Like, that's just how it is. And I believe in heaven and hell. Like, that's just something that I need to believe in personally.
Something I've struggled with a lot in my faith is the fact that people who I genuinely love and respect may not spend eternity with me. It's hard. It's hard for me to handle in a lot of days. But I also believe in a book that says there's only one way into heaven, and it's by believing into Christ.
After death, I think it's just a nothingness. It's very similar to when before you were born. It's just you non-existence.
People shouldn't be so logic-based. Just have some faith, in general.
I think you need to really understand that sometimes life isn't in your own hands. Sometimes things just happen, the world is a certain way, and maybe you have to deal with it rather than believing that someone else somewhere is dealing with it for you.
God is not like just some guy in the clouds with a beard and some hair. He's like... It's just this thing where you cannot even begin to like fathom or like imagine what he really is, what he truly is. And you never can while you're still alive. It's only after you pass that you truly understand what he is, this thing is, this higher force, so to speak.
When I say I'm open-minded towards Christians, I don't mean I can almost believe that there's a God and Jesus and all that. What I mean is that I can accept that a lifestyle with those beliefs can lead to very promising, nice things.
If you're a good person, you're good by your family, and you're good by your friends, and you do nice things, and you've lived a good, full life, you'll go to heaven. Or maybe you won't go to heaven, then the last laugh's on me. But that's fine. I'm still trying to figure it out myself.